to our lead policy committee meeting. We got a lot of interesting and important urgent things to talk about as well. So I'm Mayor Walker from Greater City, as you all know, but I'd like to welcome all of you here. I'm going to turn the time over to Justin, who's going to start off on all of the interesting items. Justin, all right.
All right, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. So first, you probably noticed you don't have food in front of you yet. If you're here in person, if you're online, then you may have food in front of you. You can't tell. The food is late. We'll be here in 30-45 minutes. Once it's here, feel free to go back and grab it quietly. But that will be coming. We apologize. Caterer had a mix up there. So let me tell you, we're gonna walk through some of the political staging, what's coming up in the 2024 session, which is looming ever closer. Give you legislative updates, talk about a few interim topics that are coming up, and then get out of here. So brace yourself, session is coming. We're not too far away. This week is the last week of interim committee meetings. So after Wednesday, there's no more specific interim committee meetings scheduled. We'll have an idea of what bills are open, what's out there. They'll start numbering things, we'll start tracking it. All of that good stuff is coming. So first thing we want to talk about is state revenues. If you recall last year, one of our messages, and if you're trying to follow the slide, it's the bottom box. One of our messages last year was the state had a surplus, but the cities did not have a surplus. That resonated very well with legislators, and helped stave off quite a few unfunded mandates and everything. This year, we're not anticipating anybody is going to have a surplus, whether it's at your level or at the state level. So our message this year is we don't have a surplus and you don't either. So we're gonna have to work on that, but we don't expect there to be a lot of additional revenue, or any additional revenue, I should say, which could be a good thing. In that if they're going to want to do something, they're gonna have to unfund something to fund something else. Not that there hasn't been unfunded mandates in the past, but the fiscal picture is different this year than it has been the last couple of years. So I want to talk to you about a couple of legislative audits that have both come out and are coming out. So first off, just a reminder that the audit we talked about last LPC on IPA came out last month. We're expecting to see some discussion about that at interim this week. And next month, we'll come back and have some very specific discussions about what other legislative proposals are coming out. I know Kate's really excited about that. So I know you're on filter, so I'm not even going to have you say anything about that right now. I apologize. The audits that are coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow. It's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday. So tomorrow the legislative audit subcommittee meeting is going to be taking place at 3:30 p.m. Room 450 in the Capitol if you want to come in person, otherwise you can watch it online. A couple of audits that we're watching there. The first one, and these are the titles of the audits, and because audits are not released until that meeting starts, beyond the titles, there's not a whole lot. We either know about what's in the audits or can say about the audits in some cases. So first one is a performance audit of Utah's water management. Just by a show of hands, was anybody in this room contacted by legislative auditors about water management? All right, that's good to know, I guess. We don't have any cities that are in the room, at least, that went on that may be more than districts. We don't know what's in this audit. We don't know exactly what it's going to say. You know as much as I know now because of that title. So we're interested to see what comes out of that one. The next one that we do know a little bit more about is the performance audit of Utah housing policy, a case for statewide strategic planning and accountability. Both Carson, Carson, Cam, Jared, and I have all read this audit. We do know what's in this audit, but we cannot say anything about what's in the audit until it is released. There's going to be a board meeting on Wednesday at noon where we are going to discuss what is released in this audit. If you're interested in listening into that board meeting, just listen and hear the discussion. Feel free to let us know, reach out to us, and we can send you information for that. Our board meetings are public, so anyone is welcome to come listen to that. But we'll talk more about what is specifically in there on Wednesday. but Cameron and I will be prepared tomorrow to have a response to that. There's not much else I can say about that audit until it comes out, but that is what's coming out tomorrow. And then we'll have additional discussion there. Is Kevin in the room? Where did he go? You want to yell at him and tell him it's his turn? Or I can start making more stuff up to talk about. All right, Cam, I just teed off the housing audit, so it is your turn to run up. Right now, we just said housing audit is coming up tomorrow. We've reviewed it. There's not much we can say about it. The one thing I will say about this, and then Cam, you can do any cryptic editorial that you want on the audit. They took a lot of feedback, and they said we can say that from the first version of the audit to the last version of the audit, there has been some market improvement. We can't show you what the first draft says. You're just gonna have to take our word on that one. But the auditors did take a lot of feedback, so thank you for data that you provided to us. That was very helpful in what we provided. And then I'll let you say what you want to and kick it off.
Perfect, thank you, Justin. And again, when the food arrives, we'll just quietly go back and grab food as the meeting progresses here. The audit will go live tomorrow at 8:30. That is a public meeting. Justin and I will be there to testify on it, and then we sent our letter in response to the audit a week ago. But the audit already has reignited the flame at the Capitol to do more on housing policy. And you'll see why once you see the audit. And it will affect every city and town in the state in some form or fashion. So be aware of that. Even though the audit is in a better place because of their collaboration with us, I do applaud the Legislative Auditor's Office for meeting with us several times and hearing our concerns and putting some of them into the audit and actually taking other pieces out of the audit. It is still an audit, that housing audit is still going to make every mayor and council member uncomfortable in the state. It'll also make developers uncomfortable, and I think it's gonna make other legislators uncomfortable. But I do think we've already seen in the last few days that the legislators who have the audit are starting to respond to the audit. In fact, Justin, did you reference Friday yet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we had a meeting with the governor on Friday that was spurred on because of the audit. So we'll come back to that in just a second. So that's one piece that has been circulating through the Commission on Housing Affordability that that the audit will also likely touch on is around the housing database. As a reminder, we as a league asked for a better, more holistic database several years ago. It was in House Bill 462. This database will go live next month. So it'll be live before the session. And we've been trying to ensure that the full story around housing policy is part of that database. So part of the reason we've been driving home the entitled unit number so heavily is to try to get that number into the database and within the audit. And as a quick update there, those cities that have contacted Carson and followed up on that data request, we have 66 cities who've done so, and we have 190,000 entitled housing units for which building permits have not yet been pulled. 190,000 in those 66 cities around the state. So we have been banging that drum, and the database will have that piece of it. Another kind of key piece coming to a head here in the next few weeks is the Envision Utah study. This document, Land Use Strategies to Bring Housing Back Within Reach. I have a hard copy of it in my bag. It just went live at the end of last week. And there are recommendations for the state and recommendations for local government within that document. Number 5 and 6 have been addressed either through legislation last year or upcoming legislation this year. So the facilitating use of off-site construction techniques, that's the dialogue around modular construction that we talked about at LPC previously. So 5 and 6, there's been a lot of legislative action, consensus legislative action in that space. 1, 2, 3, and 4, we've been demonstrating with our internal data that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are happening with greater regularity around the state. But those are 4 recommendations for local government. I will point out that as we met with Envision, and Envision actually came to the league board meeting a couple of times about the league board, they did not call in these recommendations, they did not call for state preemption of local land use. So these recommendations are for local policymakers, not for state policymakers. Then they had a list of recommendations for state policymakers, including around state infrastructure bank to help unlock housing units that are entitled but can't be built yet, which again has been one of our primary asks this year. Another key piece coming to a head right now, you think about it as all these different clouds on the storm clouds on the horizon is guiding our growth. Again, it was instrumental in getting this funded. You, as league members, saw the first results at the league convention before anybody else had seen them. Now these results are public. This is just a sample on the housing side, but housing, transportation, connectivity, housing, transportation, open space, water are the four subject areas. And this has been, this data has been part of town halls that are going around the state, informing local government leaders and others about these survey results. And again, we've had quite a few conversations in the last couple of weeks with the governor's office and senior legislators saying, how are we implementing the results from guiding our growth? Our response back has been to say, a lot of these results are validating what we are already planning. And again, 190,000 entitled units out there. But I think all these pieces are coming together now in a way that we anticipated, but that moment is now here. And I'll get to the next steps in a little bit. Then I think I mentioned to this group last month, but we hosted a bunch of state league directors and state league directors and government relations directors from basically every state except California that is dealing with high growth and population growth and an increase in housing prices. And so we spent an entire day with our counterparts from other state leagues talking about what's happening in each of our states. These are a sample of what we've seen in these other states. You're seeing pretty similar trends in other places. In our case, Utah has an upzoning preemption on IADUs, but nothing else. But those other things exist in other states. State targets with penalties. We don't have that here. We have consequences for non-compliance with MIHB, but not specific benchmarks or metrics. But again, the database and the audit are going to continue the conversation in that direction. A state overlay for affordable units. We're seeing this in several states around the country. A builder's remedy. So if a city is non-compliant with their version of MIHB, then a builder can build if it meets certain criteria, regardless of local zoning, and that gets to the preemption zoning authority. So as we gather this info from other states, we're hearing more and more state legislators bring these ideas up because obviously information circulates quickly. And so you combine this with guiding our growth with the housing audit, with revisions to recommendations, and the kind of relative calm from the last few weeks with the UEOC recommendations of not having any of the non-consensus items moved. I think we need to organizationally recognize that once that audit comes out tomorrow, it's going to be a new volume, both politically and policy-wise. So again, overall themes, the question we keep getting asked is how do we collectively produce more starter homes? We're going to hit a couple other topics before we come back to this question because we're going to do some slide up later in the meeting. We want to just plant this question, which is not a surprise, right? This is similar to the Slido question we asked in the last meeting around starter homes. There's been some more definition around this concept since we last met that we'll get to when we do the Slido side. The good news to report though is that the messaging and the information that we've been providing back to state leaders has resonated. It has been refreshing to meet with members of leadership on the House and Senate side and with the governor, have them all acknowledge cities don't control the labor shortage, can't influence interest rates. They are recognizing all the market forces out there. Even the developer gets a small lot, but then builds a large unit that's not affordable. So there is more acknowledgement and recognition now than there's ever been. So to me, that is a huge positive for the collective dialogue. And there's a greater acknowledgement around those market forces. the feedback we've been getting as recently as Friday is, we get all of that, we recognize cities there have done a lot in this space. We need cities and developers to both stretch more. Okay, so we'll come back to that, in a moment. We're gonna pivot to specific proposals that we've got language for. We're gonna be an interim this week, and then we're gonna come back to the housing space and ask some key slide questions. With that being said, are there any questions for me in the framing sense before we pivot to some other topics? Okay, there are comments online, not directed to me, so that's good for now. Nobody in the room. Okay, in that case, I'm going to turn it back to Justin to give an update on the latest on the bid front. And then we'll hit some of these items that for which we have language, or are going to be an interim this week. And then we'll come back to the big picture stuff on housing. So Justin.
All right, I know. So here's, I think the most important part for everybody is, the current proposal is not an ID. They're infrastructure financing districts, and that just doesn't acronym very well, but, or sure. And so, Representative Dunnigan has brought a new proposal. We've circulated it out there. If you want to see a copy of this, shoot me an email. I can send you the current draft of it. And we do expect that he will bring this up during interim. There's still plenty of discussion to be had here. So what we're presenting here is by no means a final deal. So we're not even going to plan on taking a position on this today. I just want to give you an update, maybe get a few comments, and then we'll certainly have more discussion when we have a more solid proposal. But what the current proposal is instead of relying on the PID code and making a new version of that, we're looking at relying on the special district code. So the drafting attorney has decided to look at special district code, creating infrastructure financing districts, and just relying on that current code. So the way these would be created is by petition signed by 100% of the property owners, which includes governing documents that include how the district may transition or will transition from an appointed to elected board. So if you're saying yes, that could be one property owner who signs that petition, you are correct. The district is separate and distinct from other political subdivisions. A board member would not have to be a resident in certain circumstances, including consent from all owners, see my comment above, and the district does not include any residents. Once there are residents in the districts, then there will be some changes. Yeah, very well.
You said may transition, so it's not. So
So-
it may transition to an elected board, but it may not.
Correct. So the question is, does it have to change to an elected board? And in the governing documents, it would not have to transition to an elected board. They could remain appointed, and there's an important point about that in a moment here. The property tax rate is 0.0004, and the property tax revenue may not be used for the repayment of the bonds. The lien on the unit has to be paid off before a certificate of occupancy is issued. That is different from previous proposals where it was at the time of building permit. There is specifically no eminent domain authority given to these districts. The special district cannot levy or collect tax revenues that exceed the certified tax rate unless there's an elected board of trustees. That's how the draft reads. What the sponsor has said he is going for is the entity could not tax until the board is elected. So Mayor Walker, to your point, if they never transition to an elected board, they would not, under the idea, ever be able to levy the property tax. So that is the current proposal. Open it up for questions that I may or may not be able to answer or comments. So Liam, do you want, we got the mic there?
If they paid off the bond with the infrastructure, does the district dissolve, or does it continue on in perpetuity, be able to levy more taxes in the future?
That is, I
So, you know what?
That is a great question. I don't know if anybody read that far or remembers. I have to look up what the dissolution process is. Does anyone remember who's read it?
I think under the special infrastructure district code, it would continue on until it's officially killed off.
And so it's affirmatively dissolved. Okay, we'll read that and double check on it. That's a good question. Yeah, Mark.
Are police powers addressed in that section of code?
I don't believe police powers are specifically addressed, but they give them the taxing authority, not the other authorities.
Can we make sure that they don't have that?
Yeah, the sponsor has no intention of doing anything other than taxing authority. So yeah, we can make sure that there's no police power there. Is it?
I guess I just don't understand, because I thought the whole point was to allow them to access financing they couldn't otherwise get, presumably long-term financing. What does it mean? The lien on the unit has to be paid off before the certificate of occupancy is issued. When I read that, it makes me think, okay, you can get financing, but it's only construction financing. And now you can't have any, so it'd be a very, very short-term loan, and I don't know, maybe that helps. Is that your understanding that, hey, no one uses any of these houses that are built until this loan that we're talking about is paid off in full, liens released?
That is correct, and it would be, yeah, property by property. It would be paid off on that property before anyone moved in, yes.
Or maybe it's house by house on a bigger project.
And that is good.
That is good.
We
So-
don't want that debt to carry on as a second mortgage for future homeowners.
Yeah, the debt would not be tied to that homeowner. The homeowner would never see that debt, is the idea. So the question here was, say that again, Mayor Walker.
What's the 0.004 paying?
What is the 0.004 paying for? And that's a great question. The idea is nothing ever. The idea is basically that they would have this authority, they would have the taxing authority that would then allow them access to the public bond market. However, the way this is structured, there's not really the idea would be they never really use that power. They would have it so they could get the public bond market financing. But it's structured in a way that would not incentivize them to ever actually levy or use it. Whether that is accurate or not, that's the idea. Yes.
Do you know what chapter of code they're planning on writing this into?
I can send you the draft. I looked it up. It's 17 something. It's it's a special district code. But
B?
thank you, Mark. So 17B. Thank you.
Special districts. pay
Oh.
their trustees. Special districts pay their trustees $5,000 a year. Where would that come from? Is that the taxing entity?
So that's a good question. I have to look at the special code on that one. It wasn't specifically anything different in this draft that addressed that. So whatever current code is would apply. And if you read the draft, the vast majority it's like an 80-page bill. The vast majority is just existing code that's in the special district code. There's not a lot that has actually changed.
Adjusted.
Yeah.
It really is an emergency tool these people could use to backstop. I said, in effect, this becomes an emergency tool. So whatever other financing thing, we've got this ace in the hole if everything goes south. And it's really not a permanent answer.
So yeah, what they really try to do is, I will give them this credit. The issues we've brought up, they've tried to address in some way, shape, or form. Whether they've addressed them well or not, it's a different question. But when we've said we want there to be someone elected if you're going to tax, they built that in. Again, maybe it's a weird group of people who are doing it, but they're trying to build that in. So, editorializing a little bit on this. We're going to take feedback back to Representative Dunnigan. If you want to see the draft, again, email me, jaylee@ulct.org. I will shoot you the draft. Happy to get specific feedback on this. We're going to take our feedback back to Representative Dunnigan. This is by no means the end of the conversation. Again, not even taking a position on this today because we're going to see what it morphs into and changes. But just want to give you the update. This is the direction he is currently going. As a reminder, the UEOC, when they accept the recommendations, accept the idea of lids with local government approval. So there are sort of two different ideas out there floating right now, and we'll see where it lands. But again, we'll have more discussion on this. We had an infrastructure meeting on this today. We'll continue to have some discussions on this. But again, giving you the update and letting you know where things are headed. With that, turn it over to Tom.
Perfect, thank you, Justin. Transportation utility fee. Actually, Carson, I think there are a bunch of comments in here, but I think you.
Yep.
Yep, you're on. Okay, great. Transportation utility fee, long story short on this one, we had a pre-meeting prior to LPC with our work group on this topic. So if you were now part of that work group, here's what you need to know. The proposal that came back to us last week from other stakeholders looked at potentially narrowing other specific city-wide fees. This would not, so the idea here is that the legislature would codify the transportation utility fee, but the legislature would then tighten the potential use of city-wide fees for things like broadband or public safety. So we discussed that this morning and tried to figure out if there was a path forward there for us. This would not be on like a 911 surcharge. That would not be the type of fee we're talking about in the public safety space, or specific user fees for a specific use. It would be something that's charged to all cities, or excuse me, that cities charge to all residents, usually using the utility charge in order to collect that fee revenue. The second piece is process. The process that came back to us last week is a little bit different than what we had presented to this body before, but we walked through it with our work group. The key points are needs-based study, a dedicated account, an enhanced notice when you review that study and ultimately approve the transportation utility fee, and then a regular review by the council. There are additional steps too, but that's the gist of it. And then number 3 is that the fee would sunset after a certain period of time unless you did a new study and had a new vote. So those are the 3 general categories in our work group this morning, but recognizing there may be people at LPC who weren't in that meeting. I want to give you that quick overview. So the work group gave us general direction to take back to Representative Peterson and Senator Harper. Really, we had 3 options as a work group this morning. Option number 1 was to say no to their proposal as is. Option 2 was to modify the proposal. And option 3 was to say yes to the proposal as is. And ultimately, the group settled on let's seek to modify her proposal or modify their proposal in these 3 general categories. And then they gave us some specific feedback on pieces that were workable and pieces that raised red flags. So that's what we'll be working on, is taking that outline in these 3 categories and making some modifications to take back to her. The key political calculation here is that the court has said cities do have the authority to transportation utility fees. The court was silent on whether or not the particular utility fee in that litigation was reasonable, and state law requires fees to be at a reasonable standard. So really the political threshold question is, do we codify a reasonable process and codify that reasonableness approach in a way that then makes the transportation utility fee defensible in a much broader way than it is. If we do nothing, we have the court case, and it's an important court case. But we anticipate there will be bills every year attacking that court case. So it's better to codify a process now that we can live with, or fight the fight over and over and over again. And then recognizing too, this year, election year for legislators, the entire House and the Senate. And as Justin indicated earlier, their budget crunch is tight this year. So having a conversation with them about local revenue in a year when their state revenues are tight is tricky. But to the credit of Representative Peterson and Senator Harper, they've made a compelling case to a lot of their colleagues that, and we've supported them in this, that cities have this authority, and we're willing to essentially codify the parameters around that authority. Yeah, I was getting that's how it's getting close to the question. Oh, so like that. Put some parameters around that authority, and there've been, there's been some appetite for legislature. Any questions, Lynn?
Yeah, Lynn-based Sandy City, Andrew Gruber might be able to speak this better than I can, but a reasonable fee with a sunset doesn't get us very much in terms of capacity to do projects. We really need a fee that is reasonable and bondable, meaning that we can use it, borrow against it. So if it has a sunset, meaning we can't bond against it, then the amount of the fee has to be much higher if we're going to try and do any meaningful project.
Yeah,
that would be my concern.
No, it's a good point, and we did have that exact conversation with Representative Peterson and Senator Harper and the other stakeholders around the question of bonding. And there's not there's not a lot of support for the idea of using the tough as a viable tool. They felt like the sunset, the sunset concept would, be more palpable to legislators because it forces a regular review. And having that study from a city perspective, if you have a study that's 20 years old, you shouldn't be relying on that for your transportation expenses. You should be doing that more regularly. So we made the bonding argument. They thought the sunset trumped, the policy around the sunset trumped the policy around bonding. At least that's it.
Yeah, and you know the political realities better than I do. But if we are negotiating this, negotiating from a court case that gives us the authority without a sunset to a bill that includes a sunset, I don't think is a win for us.
Well, that was the exact question we were asking this morning, is where we can live with in the proposals. And ultimately, the unofficial recognition of the word was see if we can modify these three provisions, because again, with the politics being what they are, the capital we're in now, there's a lot of interest in just prohibiting the transportation utility, period. So do we take the risk of saying no to a middle ground approach and have the fight over the existence of the fee? Or do we find a middle ground approach that provides some stability and certainty for cities and perpetuity? That's really the threshold question. And based on the feedback from the group this morning, that proposal as written wasn't there, but they gave us some good feedback on what we could do to try and get it there.
Cam, can I just add really briefly to that? When the not being able to sunset and therefore not being able to bond against this is, as Cam's alluded to, intended to be a limitation on the use of the tool. And as you're noting, it is a notable limitation, but in the context of the possibility of the tool being eliminated in its entirety. So as Cam's noting, I think this is something worth continuing to have dialogue about as we head into and then actually get into the legislative session to make the tool as effective as possible for communities.
Good. Thank you, Andrew. And then any other questions of people who weren't in the meeting earlier? Roger, go ahead, and then we'll.
I was just gonna say, there's a lot of discussion on the word sunset. We use terms like sort of a mandated update and other things. I mean, I guess that's part of the discussion. The goal here was, I think, the President Peterson said, all the ones, some periodic examination of what was an issue. I don't think, I mean, this doesn't have a public vote in my opinion. So it's the issue becomes really, like you said, a 20-year-old study, how close is that to legitimizing reasonableness, which is a different issue than politics and sunsets are.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Any other questions on this? Okay. If you have additional questions, grab Roger or me either after the meeting or or electronically. Okay. Those of you who are here, you should be able to grab the grid. As a reminder on the colors, the green reflects the consensus items that came out of the Commission on Housing Affordability, the red are the non-consensus items. Okay. We're only going to focus on what's in yellow because those are items that are still being deliberated on, some of which has language, some of which doesn't. So we just printed the whole grid because we've updated a little bit since our last meeting, but again, red and green we've talked about already, and we've gotten your direction on already. So on the page that says number 11, short-term rentals, you'll see in yellow, ULCT short-term rental work group is considering all these options. So there are currently 3 potential bills floating around out here. There's Representative Muslim's bill, which is different from his bill last year. It's a much narrower version from last year's bill that would tweak, we prefer to tweaking the nominal language, but it really is getting definitions. That's really the objective of that bill. It would not have the pilot program that he proposed last year. Representative Benyon is getting to different regulations, both at the state and local level around short-term rentals. And then the tourism industry is looking at potential legislation around platform accountability. The state would have some responsibility to ensure that the platforms are meeting certain requirements. We have an entire resolution on this topic that really can be boiled down to land use authority and ensure revenue collection, which gets the equitable treatment between hotels and short-term rentals. So our work group met last week to consider these different options. So we're simply reporting back to LPC. The short-term rental group will be meeting again next few weeks as we get a little more language here, but I at this point expect all three of these bills to move forward, and we'll need to take a vote on them at some point. If you're not in that short-term rental group, you want to be, let us know. We'll be following up with that group here in the next couple of weeks. Okay, then pivoting to the ULCT growth page, we've already hit. Then you can see the land and transportation utility stuff highlighted in yellow. So we just hit those a moment ago. Next page will be Child Land Use Task Force. You can see number 2 and number 4 both have items highlighted in yellow. Number 2, we talked about this the last couple of meetings around sidewalk installation timing. The problem that developers are trying to solve here is they're trying to avoid having to build the same sidewalk twice. We build the sidewalk, then during construction, the sidewalk gets ruined, they have to build it again. And so they propose language that would say you have to have a sidewalk and get the C of O, but they would be able to do a bond that would allow them to get the building permit and not have to build the sidewalk up front. There's been several drafts going back and forth. On Thursday, they told us they were going to send us updated language. So if your city wants to see that language, you can let us know today so we can circulate it. We're not taking a vote on it today. If you want to see the updated language that reflects this progress from our last meeting, let us know so we can get your eyes on it. Likewise, on number 4, we received some language on Monday that is trying to address setbacks. This is different than the setback conversation that happened with the Commission on Housing Affordability, but it has cropped up in the conversation around smaller houses, smaller lots, etc., where in some jurisdictions they allow window well or a small landing that comes off of your the French doors to access the backyard. Some communities allow that in setbacks, some don't. And so practically, simply relaying information, the concern we heard back from developers is that when they're in Cameron City, they're allowed to do that landing into the setbacks, or people can have ingress and egress, but in Justin City, they're not allowed to. So instead of having that same unit that they can build in both places, they have to adjust the unit in the second place. It doesn't allow for the landing where the window well and setback. They have to redo the plan. And so their request is to say if it's a small landing with ingress, egress, and window well, the state also would be an adequate access that could be always allowed in the setbacks. So we received an updated language about this over the weekend. Wanted just to give a quick opportunity if anybody has any thoughts or concerns about either number 2 or number 4. Speak up now if you think this concept on number 4 makes sense. If you have concerns, basically give us some quick feedback here on items number 2 and number 4, so that as we're negotiating on them, we have a sense of where we want to go, and then we can bring back specific language for a vote once it's in the bill form.
On number 4, the setbacks change city to city anyway, so I don't see how it's saving the developer any to try and streamline their footprint, because they're going to change it city to city anyway. So allowing them to go into the setback with their landing or whatever, I don't think it's saving them anything. It's just causing a headache for the city.
Well, for better or for worse, they would disagree, because we've made that exact argument all year around the idea of states that have setbacks, but the point that they've been pushing has been that they do have, especially the larger builders, they do have a specific footprint that they would use. And they, on Thursday, shared a whole bunch of examples of where they wanted to build this exact footprint in the 2 different cities, and they could have, but for one city allowed the landing instead of the setback in one city.
So Cameron, this is the same conversation we had earlier, and that is that bigger houses on smaller lots, right? Show us how this is helping with housing affordability or affordable housing.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and we made that point repeatedly too. The way they responded to it the other day, they actually did address it the other day. And the response was that when they have to redo the plans, and they have to redo it to fit here versus there, that does add costs on their end. And that cost ultimately gets passed on to the home buyer. They also gave several examples of where residents wanted a certain unit, they weren't able to get that unit because of that setback fees, so it forced them into, they forced them into a different footprint that the resident didn't want. In some cases, it was more expensive footprint because of the window walls and amenities. So, yeah, just relaying the messages that came as part of our discussion on Thursday, but that's what we wanted to get some feedback early, and I thought I saw probably good. Okay, yeah, Sherry says it's a tool to allow for smaller lots. Well, I'm glad people are bringing up the smaller lots piece, because we're gonna pivot to that here in just a second. The argument on the developer side would be with,
Sorry.
yeah, let me just hit Sherry and then we'll come back to Tim. Their argument is when you get the smaller lot, the window well and this little landing facilitate a more buildable footprint, even with a smaller house on that smaller lot. So that's their argument. We'll come back to the smaller lot in a second, Tim.
Just on the issue with the window wells and that, on side yard setbacks, are they taking into account any easement issues? You don't want to build those things into easements, and that can be problematic if you have smaller setbacks and window wells go into that. So just the point.
No, it is a great point, because we were talking about several examples that cities have provided us recently where the city was fine with the window well going into the setback, so long as easements were met, and actually required the builder to alternate the window wells on the different houses to make it easier for public safety access if necessary. And there's been an acknowledgement from them on that front too. They just want to be able to have that flexibility for landings and window wells to go into setback. So it could be that we come back with language that says window wells and landings can go into setback so long as you meet your easements and public utilities, et cetera, et cetera. And then, that kind of meets in the middle. And then on Spencer said, I don't think window well landing should, I think it should be, okay, so it should not go into the 5 foot setback. Yeah, and this is, if it's a 5 foot setback, in a lot of communities, you've got the 5 foot setback, but some communities you have much larger setbacks. And so that's part of the issue they brought up too, is they're a much larger setback. And then you say they can't go in the setback, you're making it harder on the home builder. Gary, and then Gary's the end then.
Just a concern with the window wells, putting window wells closer, setbacks closer to each other. When you're talking about snow shed and water shed from property to property, you're creating a problem of potentially filling window wells with water. That's part of the reason we have the setbacks and that we don't allow window wells in those setbacks. Was that addressed at all?
Not on the snow side. We did talk about stormwater, and what, part of the feedback we were getting last week was they showed a whole list of research they had done about how every city has handled this differently. So some are allowing window wells and some aren't. So it's kind of it is a local control argument there. When we make the arguments though about stormwater, their response was, well, it's okay over here for stormwater, but not over here. Why is that? And we then made the argument about terrain and geography.
Well, if consistency is what they want, then I would propose that the cities we consistently say you cannot have window wells inside a setback.
Go the other way.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. Any other thoughts? I see Jamie online. I would not include the overhangs if not going to setback. Good. Well, this is helpful. Again, we got some language over the weekend we'll be looking at. If any of your cities want to have eyes on this, again, grab lead staff, let us know, because we'll be circulating this language. But we want to get some high level feedback on it today. Okay, and then the last thing from the grid for today on the technical side is again, this came back to us, over the weekend, but around landscaping requirements. In large part, the policy issue of this has been decided by the legislature many years ago. And then it was clarified last year, and now there's this additional issue to it. And it is this intersection of cities who are trying to meet district requirements to apply for water conservation. And so you have to meet, for example, Jordan Valley's requirements in order to receive their water. You have to meet those landscaping requirements. The legislature, probably a decade ago, created policy that cities could not require landscaping bonds on private property. There were some ambiguities in that language that the legislature updated last year, and we negotiated on that language, but ultimately that was a big deal on the property rights coalition side that the legislature agreed with, and moved to. We've had some examples of cities that have been withholding the certificate of occupancy from builders this past interim based on them not meeting those landscaping requirements, which for some legislators and for the builders feels like in an effort to undermine what happened on landscaping bonds last year. That cities can't require the landscaping bond, so now instead of requiring the landscaping bond, we're requiring the C of O or withholding the C of O. And state law currently defines when local governments can withhold C of Os. So there's an inconsistency there around the landscaping on private property and when a city can withhold C of Os. So what they were proposing is preclude the withholding the C of Os, but put a requirement on the builder to provide notice to those residents as they're moving in that Cameron City has these landscaping requirements, so water-wise landscaping requirements. So you provide that notice to the homeowner that they have a certain amount of time to meet those landscaping requirements. And then they're on notice and the homeowner is responsible for it. And the argument that, we've had this discussion at the Capitol quite a bit as of late. And the argument we keep hearing back from legislators is, yes, we want the water-wise landscaping. We don't think the city should necessarily dictate what the water-wise landscaping is on the property. To have the principle, but then let the property owner figure out what they're going to do to meet that water-wise landscaping. And they may contract it out, they may save the money and do it as sweat equity, but either way, felt like we've had a decent amount of pushback from even legislators that have been promoting water-wise policy, saying this is not an area where you feel like the city should be withholding C of O or requiring a landscaping bond. So again, last year they addressed landscaping bond. This year they're looking at saying, clarify you can't withhold the C of O. We've said we still need to have some sort of mechanism to make sure that people are aware of those water-wise requirements and are doing those water-wise requirements, whether it's the landscaping bond or C of O, whether there's other mechanisms and the developers or they offered this proactive notice piece as part of our dialogue last week. Any quick thoughts on this that you want us to be aware of as we continue this dialogue? Let's go, Mark, and then I see a bunch in the chat, but I'm not sure if this is.
So just on the edges of this issue, we've seen, like, for example, Central Utah is more more restrictive than us in some categories, and we're still fighting the battle with them. We have not adopted their standards because they're treating it as if the state has said you must adopt the district standards, period, even if it requires additional things. So this whole excessive definition, I find it to be intriguing because in many cases, it's much more expensive what the district is requiring, which is going against housing affordability, and is requiring things that are greater than we as cities require. So fundamentally, we're being forced into this this no-win situation where we will not adopt their standards because of those discrepancies, and they have no intention of listening to us and changing their standards. And so some cities are being put in a standoff. I just want you to be aware that this excessive discussion is crashing on the fact that we're being mandated for their standards and we have no ability to adjust those standards for a more intelligent choice.
Well, Mark, I'm glad you brought that up because Layton cities sent us that same information. Layton also chose not to do legal basis standards for that exact reason. And I think we did have a little bit of a breakthrough moment with the developer community last week, because communities like Harriman, Westmore, and others, who are part of our negotiations here, raised that very issue of cities being stuck in the middle, and there was, for the first time, at least an acknowledgement from their side, like, okay, we see this puts the city in a normal situation, and, you know, that's why they brought forth the noticing piece. But yeah, I think you summed it up nicely, and that's why last week I followed up with some state leaders who've been in the waterway space, said, how do you want us to handle this? Because we're in this no man's land, and the response back was basically, we don't think you should be enforcing the specifics on those individual residents. I was holding the CFO and give them the chance to figure out what makes sense for them. They actually brought up the notice thing too, so maybe that was the middle ground.
And push hard on the affordability issue.
Yeah, no, but we have all these policies, all these conflict. Yeah, so which one is more important, right? Okay, any other? Yeah.
I just have one answer. So I just want to answer one question that was asked on the infrastructure district piece, on dissolution. So the current draft currently has a provision that the district would be dissolved, or the board would have to dissolve the district within 180 days of the debt being paid off. So once all the debt is paid off on the property, that district would dissolve within 180 days. Looked at what else, just wanted to get that answer that was asked earlier. Yep.
Okay, we promised you slide, we're gonna deliver on slide. We'll promise you lunch, and hopefully we're going around there.
It's gonna be a graphic.
Yeah.
Politics.
Well, the bar, we're gonna ask a flyer with a bunch of hungry people who are already frustrated, so this is good. Okay, so this is just a recap of what we said a few minutes ago, the audit, Envision Utah, guiding our growth, the state database, actions in other states, provinces. Okay, oh, that's true, because we look at British Columbia, that's right, got it. And then, well, actually, you know, you laughed about British Columbia, the British Columbia provincial legislature just preempted all the cities in British Columbia to require a certain minimum number of units per acre. So, yes, I'm glad you put the proposition. And then the political urgency around starter homes, that's what we're gonna get to there. So, at our last meeting, we threw out a couple of concepts. We're gonna report back to you here. Just refreshing, make sure slider works. We asked you at our last LPC, we gave you a couple of ideas of how we could expedite administrative process, how you could expedite legislative process. I will quickly report to you on what those slider results were. Survey says, perfect. So this is what you told us last month when we asked about expedited administrative action for starter homes. 61% of you were in a comfortable scale, 32% of you were in a concern scale. You can see the breakdown there. When we asked about expedited legislative action, the way we framed it was consider the rezone. If a rezone request came that had a certain criteria of starter homes, a little lower on the comfort scale, but again, just want to report back to you. This is what you told us. So we've been trying to work through like what does this actually mean, and then we had an open-ended slider question, which was super helpful. A lot of you gave feedback. We summarized up here on the screen. So this is what you told us last month. That has been informative for us as we've been trying to figure out a path forward here in light of the political urgency. We've highlighted these two pieces around the market forces, why aren't developers building the units now, those 190,000 entitled units, and then how to ensure that those starter homes actually become for sale product and not starter homes for rent. Multiple league members brought this up, and this is also consistent with the core principles around this issue. Okay. Justin, you want to give just a quick overview of Friday's meeting together?
Yeah, so exciting Friday morning. Governor contacted us on Thursday afternoon, I think. We had a lot of lead time and said, I want to meet Friday morning. And I want to talk about ideas I've got around starter homes in particular. So, there was just a handful of us, Cameron and I, someone, I guess, we can probably say this in the meeting, maybe not, someone from the development community, and then some of the governor's staff there. There's 8 of us in the room. And the governor really wants to have a moonshot at starter homes, as something he would like to see more built, more of affordable, and would like to put a time frame on that. So, the governor pointed out that he's looked at, World War II, post-World War II housing production as an aspirational goal for starter homes. Now, if you say, what does that mean? That's why it says definition still TBD, because there's a lot to be worked out here. What the governor's really interested in is some kind of scenario where cities plan for affordable starter homes, where developers build them, so we get some kind of, for lack of a better term, guaranteed outcome, that if we plan for this and we zone for this thing actually gets built, that it is affordable, that it is owner occupied, and that it remains that way for a very long time. His goal is to get everybody in there. The exact line he put in there, if you look at that 4th bullet point down there, is everybody must stretch. So one of the things he did say, and I think this is important to note, is, well, actually, let me ask a question first. How many of you saw the governor's comments either at his press conference last month or in the UEOC last month, where he talked about cities needing to do more and to build more, and they're in the way, etc. He said it a few times, so quite a few hands are up. So the governor specifically also told us on Friday he's tired of beating up on cities, and he has. That was a good win. He's realized, and I'm sure he's realized this before, but realized the complexity of it, that developers have got to step up and build these kind of things. So he looked at developers in the eye and said, if the city's plan for these, if the city's zone for these, you guys got to step up and build them. And so the base criteria, again, they're matching the criteria that we've had as principles throughout the year: affordability, home ownership, quality of life, sustainable infrastructure. So that's what the governor is asking for. Now, how do we accomplish that outcome is a whole different question. And there's a lot of TBD involved there. So Cam, I'll let you take it from there, and let's ask some questions.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Justin. There we go. Okay, so we've got 4 Slido questions here, 4 policy Slido questions. So we'll give everybody a chance to log in both online and in the room.
5 questions.
5 policy, 1 process, right? Yeah. But good. This is why I like ours. Always precise. Okay. I see enough phones that are down now in the room. You could do city name or your individual name, either way is fine. Okay. So this is the question that several of you asked aloud a month ago, that we've been trying to figure out how to define it, and here's what we hope you will answer here. What is an owner-occupied starter home in your community? And that could be price, it could be housing type, it could be a small house on a small lot, it could be a condo, it could be, deed restricted at a certain price point. But when we think about what does success look like in your respective communities, what is an owner-occupied starter home in your community? So, open-ended question, you tell us what that looks like, because in our conversation with the governor on Friday, he told us what he thought it looked like, and then we said, well, in this city that's built out, it's going to have to look different. Oh, you're right. And then, so it went this great back and forth, but if we can't come up with the definition here, it makes everything else much more difficult.
And we're going to ask you the question before we tell you what the governor said.
Yeah.
This is how we.
Just, yeah, once you click it.
Okay, so we'll just leave it.
Clicking it closes, right?
No, clicking it should get.
Okay, so yeah, we're not showing results for a second. We're gonna let you have a minute to answer. So you can't steal other people's answer.
Perfect. So leave this open for a second so you can keep you know, keep putting that stuff in. Yeah, Gina, yeah, that's a excellent point. That we actually were talking about communities like yours on. Yeah, like how, what does a starter home look like when you've got 700 versus at 1. Yeah, but there's a lot of consistency, which is good. Because this is actually pretty consistent with some of the stuff we were raising in the meeting on Friday. Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, so now recognizing that you've just now defined what a starter home looks like in your community. How would you feel about a requirement for developers that they had to build X percentage of the housing units in your community as defined as starter homes? So this, you know, again, if you're a high growth community versus an infill community, the quantity is going to be different, but in the idea being that essentially, if the zoning is there, the zoning facilitates the type of starter homes you were just describing, that type of product needs to get built. Yeah, well, that's okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Next question. Okay, so we just asked you, would you be comfortable if essentially government, whether it's local government, state government required those certain types of outcomes? What is your city currently doing, or what else could your city do to facilitate more of those starter homes, whether it's changes to your administrative process or changes to density or whatever that might be? What is it that you can control that if the governor came back and said, I want to have a requirement that these types of units are the ones that get, these types of units have to be built this way, right? Like easy example would be a big house on a small lot. That's not getting the job done. So pretty consistent people saying medium size or small house on a small lot. So if those outcomes were basically the guaranteed outcomes, what can we do on our end to facilitate those types of those units? Again, this is open-ended, so rather than us giving you a list, we wanted you to come up with your concepts. Just other thoughts. I'm also pleased to report that I just got a picture sent to me from lead staff who's picking up the sandwiches from the caterer. So nothing else from good food is leaving, so. And hopefully from a league budget perspective, we get our money back. We'll start trying now. And yeah, actually, I'm glad I came up with great conversation. We all need to do it because yeah, Herman has a really good story to tell, and it's one that we have been telling.
On that note, with some of the governor's staff has pointed out that if there were some kind of requirement, if there were some parameters made, that this would be an opportunity for a lot of people to show what you're already doing. So many of you are doing so much here that there's not a lot of criteria that can make that you're not already going to check the box on. Pam?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Wait for Mike. Mike for Mike, please.
That's why I didn't see this.
We have hundreds of new units coming into Mill Creek, but the developers are always wanting to make them owner occupied, or excuse me, rental, not owner occupied. So the city level, I know our hands are tied. I don't know at the state level if they can do more on that. And the other thing is I had a council member last week say, hey, there's a state infrastructure bank. Wouldn't it be great if there was a state housing bank or affordable owner occupied housing bank that could help facilitate or be a carrot for some of this?
Well, those are great points. On the first piece about the rentals, that theme's showed up quite a bit here too. And I can tell you there's a lot of frustration from state lawmakers that. In fact, I'm gonna reference Mayor Walker at one of our meetings with House and Senate leadership. Mayor Walker gave an example of that very thing in Marcel Street in Mill Creek. An example in Draper of higher density residential units, really trying to focus on missing middle starter home type product, only to have the developer come back and say, we can make a lot more money with rental product than ownership product. And so there's interest, and we don't necessarily have the silver bullet yet, but there's interest in like, can we figure out an incentive structure, state, locals, where government is stretching and saying, if the developer commits to do these things, then we commit to do those things. Join my microphone. Join.
An element that we are seeing more and more, and I think we'll continue to see more of because of demographic changes in our state and around the country, is that the starter homes are being competed for by both those who are trying to get into their first home and those who are downsizing. And that is driving the cost way up. So not only are we kind of playing around with the idea of trying to restrict ownership, but also who has access to them. I mean, we're really kind of bouncing into the walls of economics here, and I think that's gonna be a challenge. Maybe we just have to include stairs in all of these, so that the retirees don't want them.
No, it's an excellent point that silver tsunami is coming, and there was an article in either the Trib or the News on that very point. And the demographic data is actually quite frightening. Utah's been the youngest population forever. But if you look at the projections, we look a lot more like the rest of the country. And you're right, those empty nesters are looking to downsize, and if they want a small lot, small unit, and starter, young families are looking for that small unit. Now the economics come into play there. Okay, this has been terrific feedback. Because now let's start with this question. So before you answer this question, let's give the context. So we've told you that the audit is coming tomorrow. Maybe you haven't heard, right? Audit coming tomorrow. Stay tuned. The league board is going to meet on Wednesday, because that's when we can actually walk them through the audit. We'll have a link to it in Friday's back. That audit meeting is a public meeting, so you can listen in. You can come to the Capitol if you'd like as well. But between the housing database, the audit, conversation with the governor, we made a point to him. In fact, Councilor Ryan, you guys will appreciate this. We used South Jordan as an example in that meeting. We said, here's the data from South Jordan. Is South Jordan successful? And the response was, well, not sure, because there was not really any sort of benchmark, right? There's not a metric to say that South Jordan is successful and Providence is successful. We have MIHP, right? We have the MIHP process, which admittedly is an imperfect process, but that's really all we have right now to gauge whether communities are doing their part in applying for growth, applying for housing. So part of that conversation on Friday was, well, what should a benchmark or a metric be? Right now with MIHP, you self-report. You pick your menu items and you say, here's what we're doing in Provo, here's what we're doing in Murray or West Valley. You self-report, and then if you're in compliance, then the benefits or the consequences take place. But there's not an overarching strategic goal or benchmarks or metrics to guide that conversation. So this has happened in other states. We've been collecting information about how it's been working in other states, and the states that have done these benchmarks and metrics have all done them differently, and they're all relatively new. So with that being said, and based on your experience, what do you think the right benchmark or metric beyond MIHP could be to show how cities are doing their part to facilitate starter homes? So again, keep that open. Just other thoughts.
Yeah, I think everyone's realizing this, and again, we can't oversell the audit, but if you saw the title of the audit, this is certainly going to be a piece of it. Yeah, right now we basically have, you can show your homework and you can do things, but we don't have any grading criteria to know how successful anybody is. And I think there is a recognition of that. I think the other piece to some of the market force
It's here.
Oh, and lunch is there, if you wanna wander back and grab some food. Quietly while you think about this answer.
So we have 15 people who have submitted so far, so we're getting about 64, so we'll leave this open for a couple of seconds here. While you're still thinking through this question, let me talk you through the time frame. All right, today is November, what is it? November 13th. Okay. Interim is tomorrow and Wednesday. The governor will release his budget recommendations December 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere in there. Okay, early December. And he told us he wants to be aggressive on the recommendations we brought back from around the state infrastructure bank, where the state infrastructure bank could unlock units that are already entitled and meet certain criteria. He wants to be aggressive there. But he's trying to figure out what that means in the next couple of weeks. Likewise, he wants to bring the league officers or league representatives together with the top representatives of the development community to try to figure out these questions in the next few weeks before the session. So all of the feedback you're giving us throughout the interim, we've collected and aggregated all of it. Plus today, we're going to summarize it to take it back to league leadership, because at some point in the not too distant future, the meeting just I had on Friday will expand a little bit, but we'll be having these discussions about whether or not there's a potential path forward. So that being said, we'll open this up. And 30 comments so far, which has been terrific, and really appreciate the thoughtful responses that we've seen coming in here. We'll leave this open for 30 more seconds, and then we'll have one final slide on question on housing, and we'll go to the remaining items. Those of you in the room, yeah, perfect, just go grab your sandwich. I do want to point out though, that yes, we're getting a full refund, and Angela and Cassie on our staff, not only did they go pick them up, apparently they also helped put them together. Okay. So here's our last slide of question in the housing space. Again, you can still interrupt me, add the other slide of questions. But how many of you have shared info with your legislators about how your state's planning for growth, particularly the housing data? And we've been sharing that 190,000 regularly, but in September, as Daniel mentioned, we had people go share this information with your legislators representing your city. So have we done it? So I'll leave this open for a second as well. And Paul, so a quick feedback here on the Q&A. Paul, you asked this question from Director Littlejet. The governor was very pointed with the developers on Friday as well. So this is where I do think there's been a bit of a breakthrough, this recognition of like, there's been market failures on this side. We need local governments to continue to stretch on this side. How do we all stretch in a way that makes them move forward? And is there a path forward? Well, I heard my name. Oh, Mayor Lane.
I don't think every starter home needs to be brand new. You have large.
Sorry, can you just do this?
Sorry, I don't think they need to be brand new homes. I think we have enough existing that can be starter homes. And if everybody gets the brand new starter home, what do we do with all that inventory sitting there? But were the starter homes 40 years ago? Let's go in, put some new paint on it, and some new home to use. So I think this big emphasis on building brand new starter homes is a waste of time.
Well, I think the definition of starter home here really matters, right? Because what you just described probably applies to most of the starter homes that everybody's had. Well, in our conversation with the governor on Friday, like, yeah, we need more of that product built, but we also need an acknowledgement of the existing housing stock. The last thing I'll point out, Jamie, okay, perfect, good stuff there. Okay, we could talk about this all day. We talked about it all interim. Frankly, we've talked about it the last 5 years. But we really appreciate all the feedback you've given us, because at some point soon, legal leadership, Judge and I will, be in some high stakes deliberations on this. We want to be able to we now know everything that as of this moment is happening. Thank you for giving us the feedback, of other ideas come to get it to us, so we can funnel into leadership and be prepared, when we have these follow-up meetings. Anything else you want to hit on this?
Nope.
Yeah, have Jamie explain one, please. Okay. We have about 15 more minutes and people are being fed, so that helps. Okay. All right. Thank you to the 82% who have shared your data.
I just keep going.
Easy for you to say. Yeah, my use of the computer is like, each time doing these offense. Okay, here we go. Yeah, Polly, take it over.
I can stumble them. Hi, here as always to chat with you about homelessness. So as many of you know, with HB 499, it created Code Blue. It also created winter response task forces. There's a handout that we have printed that separate or can delineate the differences between the two of them that you can go through. But we just wanted to take a minute and go through Code Blue because it is something that everyone in 1st through 4th class counties will need to comply with from this winter on. And as we're getting into colder weather, we're getting into kind of the code should taking place. So as I mentioned, it applies to everyone in 1st through 4th class counties. It's an initiative led by Health and Human Services, as well as OHS, your county, the municipalities within your county, and the service providers. It is activated when temperatures in your county hit 15 degrees or colder. OHS is still working on the rulemaking authority with that for what exactly that means. But what it's looking like is if it is going to be essentially 15 degrees or colder in an urban center within your county, or kind of what would be the most populated core demographics, right? So if it's 15 degrees at Brighton and Alta, that should not trigger Code Blue. If it is 15 degrees in Salt Lake City, maybe it should, or it should. We'll take the maybe out there. Additionally, there's nothing that prohibits the municipality for taking a more strict standard. So for example, I know Ogden triggers Code Blue at a higher temperature. There's also been some discussions within southern Utah of being able to trigger this in extreme heat. So there's nothing within here that if your municipality wants to go above and beyond, you're welcome to do so. Health and Human Services has additional rulemaking authority, but as of right now, 15 degrees is the rule that we're aware of. Code Blue is largely about what you cannot do as a municipality. So whereas the task force for winter response is more of an affirmative duty on the city, so having to come up with a plan, Code Blue is about largely what you cannot do. So when Code Blue takes case, you cannot abate a camp, you cannot enforce a no camping ordinance. And that goes for the 2 days following the Code Blue as well. You cannot seize any personal items that someone might use to survive in the cold. So that's like a stove, sleeping bag, tent, blanket, coat, anything like that. You cannot limit or restrict a building owner if they're a nonprofit, religious organization, government building from opening up and providing emergency shelter if they would like to do so. And the one kind of affirmative piece in this is that cities are required to participate in street outreach with OHS, the county, and service providers. However, code doesn't really outline what that looks like. So that's kind of up in the air. We're negotiating that. And then the other thing is that there are additional things that service providers must do for existing shelters, including increasing capacity, making onboarding more rapid, and then you cannot do anything that would impede a service provider's ability to do what they need to do under Code Blue. Jumping back up, sorry, one thing I missed with the abatements, the one caveat to that is if there is available shelter at or available capacity at a shelter within your county, you are able to abate a camp. Right now, OHS is trying to figure out specifically what that looks like in Salt Lake County. Each of the 3 shelters have different intake procedures. John, because I'm looking at you for this, I know you're talking about it. So they're trying to figure out how to streamline what known capacity it is and have a live dashboard for what that looks like. The tricky bit is that capacity is usually taken in the middle of the night. And so it's difficult to know, right, if we were at 93% capacity last night, is that the same for the following day? Are those guys booked out, anything like that? If you have any other questions, I'm happy to chat with you offline, but this is what we're looking at for code blue. And yep, thanks so much.
All right, switching subjects a little bit, micro schools. This bill was introduced last year as Senate Bill 166. We expect that the same bill sponsor Senator Fillmore will be bringing it back this coming year. I've been told it's being presented to interim committees on Wednesday. I have not seen it on the agenda yet, so I'm not sure where it will be. But I just wanted to put this on your radar. This bill failed 1313 last year, probably largely because all three members of leadership were off the floor, so they missed a few votes there. As a quick reminder, we got to neutral on this bill last year after a lot of negotiations. It essentially went from being a pretty broad preemption to a more specific, it designates or extends the charter school permitted use status with a whole bunch of standards attached to it to these micro schools and home schools. And I'll get to the weeds there, but you still retain authority over business licensing, traffic, hours of operation, parking. There's a general public safety kind of catch-all authority. The fire chief negotiated a lot of additional fire code restrictions, requirements to meet. So again, we got neutral on this bill this year, last year, but I want to just bring this forward so you know that it's happening. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. We're running low on time, so I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Oh, that's important.
All right, public safety recruitment and retention. We've mentioned this survey a few times. For the third consecutive year, we're working with Representative Quinn on a pretty broad survey to try to capture what motivates your public safety officers, both police and fire, to stay in the field, stay in public agencies. So we've had more than 1,000 responses in the county this year, so we're really excited about that. We told the respondents that they have themselves November 30th to finish the survey, so we expect some more responses to be coming in. We shared some preliminary results with Representative Quinn and the Fire Chiefs Association, so you can just kind of get a sense of what's happening. I have just kind of a quick slide here, but again, we don't want to get too in the weeds yet because there's still some tight margins on some of these responses, and we got 20% more than those could easily change. So just to highlight, increased pay, increased retirement benefits, and increased health benefits are all in the top three. Those are pretty consistent with results last year. We've seen some things that we think are really positive trends, like we've seen agency morale and individual morale increase a little bit. We'll provide a more detailed breakdown of the longitudinal analysis when we get to be able to close the survey, or at least until we have results that are pretty clearly setting or positive change. So we'll keep you posted on this as these results come out. There is an expected bill already this year on public safety recruitment and retirement. This year's bill looks a little bit different than some of those that have been proposed in the past. We have Gary Watcott on staff who's been really kind of taking lead on some of these negotiations. So if you have any really detailed questions, I'm going to forward you those on to him. But the gist of this bill, this year's approach, and there might still be some other bills floating around there to expand retirement more broadly. But what the bill that we've been told about does is allows overtime pay towards the retirement benefit calculation. It'll reduce the 1 year cooling off period to 90 days, and it will reduce the cost of employee, or it'll reduce the employee contribution by 50%. So the intent is to make it cost neutral. We've not seen the actual analysis or fiscal note from URS, so we're still watching closely to see what that looks like. But just so you know, the goal is the we've heard this year is make the card shoulder more tailored and more narrow. But we will see what that actually ends up looking like when we have the full bill, when we have all the actuary estimates. Okay, any questions on that? All right. All right, most of the slide, did not update, because the other one I'm gonna talk about is the one in GovOps. So initiative and referendum updates, there is a bill in GovOps this Wednesday, that is going to be talking about initiative and referendum. It is a long bill, the only part that is really of any note for us is that there are some updates in the initiative and referendum code that would allow someone, who is ADA to be able to make a mark that is not a signature that would then allow for an alternate verification. So they signed or did not sign or wanted to sign a petition. And follow closely what's already happening with buy now ballots. So if you see an initiative and referendum bill, that's really what's in there. It's just an update for some ADA compliance. Don't get too excited about it. I was really excited about it and then I read it and I wasn't. As excited as you can be to read an 80-page referendum bill. So upcoming dates, just want to remind you of where we're at and where we're going in the next couple of months again. This week, final interim meetings. We're gonna have those audits released. We've mentioned those 5 or 10 times. We're gonna have the board meeting again on Wednesday. If you were interested in listening to that board meeting, want that information, please feel free to reach out to us. You can listen to that. Early December, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th-ish, the governor will put out his budget. December 11th will be our next LPC. So all those things happen before we will see you again, and then we'll have plenty to talk about in December. Then jumping forward to January, January 16th is when the legislative session actually begins. January 17th is local officials day. January 21st, or 22nd, excuse me, that first Monday will be our first official LPC. For anyone who is wondering, are we going to have an LPC on local officials day? No, we will not. We're just going to have a legislative preview. We'll talk about some of what's coming up, but will not be an official LPC. And then one of the weirdest dates I've ever seen, March 1st is the end of the legislative session. So we were barely into March, and I don't know why, but psychologically that just doesn't all kinds good. To think that we're done in March with this. So a couple reminders, many of you respond with your meeting with your legislators. Please continue to meet with them, reach out to them. A couple of important talking points this year, as we talked about. The state doesn't have a surplus and we don't either. So make sure that they know that. And then we want to be partners, not be preempted. So partnership, not preemption. We have a lot of work to do. And we've made good headway with those in the past. So with that, Mayor Walker, I'd like you to get us out of here.
Well, thank you all. You might also, some of you might be aware, the Police Chiefs Association just recently did another salary survey, which is getting compiled data wise. So if you thought your city was fairly paying your public safety, you may find out you're slipped again. So the war be still going to continue for raising public safety and salaries for firefighters and police. So I think we have that to look forward to coming out, just so you're aware. If you weren't aware of that, they've surveyed the police chiefs and have a whole new set of data. Mayor Silverstream wanted me to also invite you all, if you have the ability, to the new city hall. Mill Creek has a brand new, beautiful city hall building, and they're dedicated doing ribbon cutting on Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m. Is that when it starts?
The open house is 4 to 8, ribbon cutting at 7, fireworks 7:30.
Okay, so open house 4 to 8, ribbon cutting at 7, fireworks at 7:30. Hopefully you have a permit for the firemen. Anyway, come and celebrate with Mill Creek. They spent a lot of years in the storefront, so I know you're probably very excited to be in a real building. So anyway, with that, we'll see you all next maybe Wednesday. Come online, if not next in December. Thanks.